I've been told my entire life that Marxism is pure evil, that the only true outcome of Marxist theory is widespread violence and suffering. But what if it just isn't true? What if previous attempts were just 100 years too early and Karl Marx was right about everything? And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Not because I'm a Marxist. Well, at least I hope I'm not. I'm just a bicycle mechanic in rural Wisconsin with a YouTube channel. But I'm watching two very powerful socioeconomic forces developing right now that look an awful lot like the future Marx had warned us about. The first of which is artificial intelligence advancing faster than any of us had ever expected. This is a technology that doesn't just help workers work more efficiently, but it replaces them entirely. The second is a growing sense that the existing democratic power structures are being rewritten in real time, and not with the best interests of you and me in mind. Now, in a nutshell, Karl Marx predicted that capitalism would eventually automate labor to the point where workers became unnecessary, and that this would trigger a revolution. And as we all know, every attempt to force that revolution in the 20th century ended in absolute catastrophe. But now, for the first time in history, advanced automation technology actually exists. And as predicted, it's not owned by the workers or the state, but by the capitalists, who also just happen to be the state. So here's the nagging question I just can't stop asking myself. Are we falling face first into the very trap that Marx warned us about? And if so, do we, the people, have any say in how it unfolds? Part 1, the knock at the door. To be completely honest, I live a very comfortable, very secure life of creative self-employment, deliberately outside of corporate America, and geographically insulated from city life. Most of my neighbors are here to escape the complexity of the modern world. As a fifth-generation resident of this tiny town, I'm here because it's home. But here's the thing about living in a comfortable place. It's very easy to believe that the comfort is permanent. It's easy to tell yourself the disruptions happening elsewhere are temporary, containable, and someone else's problems. Let's just say this would be way easier for me if I'd started a channel called Instead of Noticing. And lately, I kind of wish that was the case. I have a bunch of family and close friends up in Minneapolis who have really been through a lot lately. And for the past few weeks, I've watched it all unfold through their eyes. Not through news coverage, but through phone calls and text messages expressing the kind of concern you can only hear in someone's voice. And then, last weekend, Alex Pretti was killed in a senseless act of state violence. He was part of the Minneapolis cycling community, which I'm deeply connected to. Alex was a friend of a friend. And suddenly, I'm no longer watching from afar. I'm relating from within, which has completely changed my perspective. Now, when I watch the videos of federal agents operating outside of local authority, when I see Minnesota state sovereignty treated as an obstacle rather than a constitutionally protected right, I ask myself, how did we get here? And where does this lead? And do any of us have any power to shape it? And this is when I find hope. I no longer see the war zone chaos of political unrest our government and mainstream media are telling us about. What I see is a decentralized, grassroots community response to the socio-economic dysfunction of late-stage capitalism. This isn't an organized Marxist proletarian socialist revolt. This is a much more natural and caring response. It's neighbors checking in on neighbors, small businesses offering community services. We, the people, are finding peace and security within our connections to one another without waiting for permission from above. And this is exactly what led me back to this week's video topic on how the arrival of advanced AI and the disruption of labor markets could be exactly what humanity needs right now, and how history has shown us the catastrophic consequences of getting it all wrong. Part 2, why Marxism has failed in the past. Karl Marx, writing in the mid-1800s, made a prediction. Capitalism would eventually automate labor to the point that human workers would become unnecessary. When that happens, the entire economic system would collapse under its own contradictions. The workers, the proletariat, would rise up, seize the means of production, and create a society where labor was no longer the measure of human worth. It's a compelling story, but when Lenin, Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot tried to make it happen, they ran into an insurmountable problem. Technology just hadn't caught up yet. In the 20th century, you still needed workers. Factories needed hands, and farms needed backs. The state couldn't function without human labor. So when revolutionary governments tried to force a workers' paradise free from exploitation, they faced a contradiction. They still needed a working class, and force is exploitation. Of course, today, their solution was brutally predictable. If people wouldn't labor voluntarily for the collective good, the state would make them. And anyone who resisted state oppression, well, we're seeing how that plays out right now in Tehran and Minneapolis. But I've never understood why this always gets pinned on Marx. Marx wrote about revolution coming from the bottom up. The revolution comes from the workers who are no longer dependent on the capitalist system. But 20th century revolutionaries imposed it from the top down through state authoritarianism. They essentially became the new bosses, with even more power and even more oppression. Previous socialist revolutions failed because they were premature. The technology of liberation didn't exist yet. But now, we can see this clearly on the horizon. Unlike previous waves of automation, this one doesn't just affect factory floor and farmlands. It affects lawyers, writers, programmers, and accountants. The cognitive labor that was supposed to be safe forever. And here's the strange part. The people building the systems aren't revolutionaries. They're capitalists, or the bourgeoisie in Marx's language. And they're telling us explicitly that the goal is to eliminate human toil, to automate drudgery, and to free us from work. They're selling a Marxist utopian promise to investors, which includes our government, and they're going all in on it. But none of them seem to be talking about what that means for the rest of us. Part 3, the crisis of agency. So if the capitalists are inadvertently creating the conditions for a post-labor society, shouldn't we be celebrating? Isn't this what we all want? Maybe. I mean, I really hope so. But my hope just barely offsets my fears. Throughout history, working people have had one reliable lever of power, the strike. If labor is essential, workers can uphold it. That threat, even unspoken, shapes every negotiation between capital and labor. But what happens when labor has zero value? When AI can do everything a human can do, faster and cheaper? The strike disappears as a tool. And with it goes the primary mechanism ordinary people have used to check power for 200 years. And this creates a power vacuum. And power vacuums always demand equilibrium. And what I'm watching right now, the expansion of executive authority, the deployment of federal power in defiance of local governance, the consolidation of control in Washington, this isn't happening in isolation. It's happening at the exact moment when ordinary people are losing their primary means of resistance. If a centralized power seizes control of AI infrastructure, the compute, the data centers, the models themselves, they control the means of production in a way no ruler in history could ever have dreamed of. They won't just control the factories, they will have stolen our collective source of personal and economic agency. And this is exactly what keeps me up at night. Not because I think it's inevitable and right around the corner, but because most of us have been too busy working instead of noticing. Part 4, what replaces labor? Okay, deep breath. I told myself this wouldn't become another doom and gloom video, and I meant it. Because I actually do think there's a peaceful path through this. It requires a bit of imagination and a leap of faith, but it still exists within the realm of possibility. One framework I keep coming back to is David Shapiro's post-labor economics. His key insight, as automation increases productivity, labor value decreases, but so does the marginal cost of producing almost everything. Simply put, the same force that makes your job obsolete also makes your life dramatically cheaper to sustain. This creates an opening for a realistic universal basic income. All right, fine, but where does that money come from if no one's paying income tax? And there's so much more nuance to this, but simply put, we tax the robots. The post-scarcity economy will revolve around autonomous capital. Every AI agent that replaces a human worker generates economic value. That value doesn't just belong to the company that owns the AI. A portion belongs to the society that educated the workers, built the infrastructure, and created the stable conditions for innovation. Further, we deserve to be paid corporate dividends for public data. The AI systems being built by big tech today were trained on our data. Your writing, your photos, your searches, all of this fed the models. These taxes and dividends can be paid into a sovereign wealth fund to supply the UBI. It's like the Alaskan Permanent Fund, but backed by compute instead of oil. Altogether, these mechanisms create a floor, a baseline of economic security that doesn't depend on selling your labor. But here's the important part. That's just the floor. A UBI isn't the end of human ambition. It's just the foundation that makes real freedom possible. You're no longer working for survival. You're working because you want to. And this begs the next question. If AI handles all the basic needs, what's left to do for humans? And I think the answer to that is everything that makes life worth living. And this is exactly how I've been living my life for the past decade. Part 5. What else can we do? Shapiro also describes 4 economies that have lasting value, the first of which is the experience economy. People can still create value through shared physical presence, human contact, and with personal interaction. With more leisure time, sectors like recreation, hospitality, and entertainment will thrive. Think travel guides, live performers, skydivers, and massage therapists. The second of which is the meaning economy. One of my favorite apocryphal quotes comes from Albert Camus. Should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee? As people come to terms with losing agency from their work, they will lack purpose in life. While a cup of coffee should always be enough reason to get out of bed in the morning, the demand for psychologists, community organizers, spiritual mentors, and arbitrators will increase as a result. Next is the authenticity economy. I believe this could trigger the second cultural renaissance. In a world drowning in AI-generated slop, human provenance becomes precious. We will pay extra for people who have skin in the game. Think handcrafted custom bicycles, artisan bread, the lived experience of a novelist's prose. Accountability is a premium product, and it requires humans to achieve it. And finally, we have the attention economy. In many ways, we're already here. Every time you log in, you're either a creator or a consumer. Many of us will be perfectly content with a UBI, living vicariously through creators online. My Watch Me Work Bike Farmer videos already fill that void for many of my retired viewers. My wife watches lifestyle videos of creators living fascinating lives in faraway places, just as a way to escape. Without the third space of the workplace, we will seek it out online. And there really isn't anything wrong with that now, is there? Many people feel like life without work will become meaningless. They say that idle hands are the devil's workshop, that the economic destruction from rapid automation is humanity's next real crisis. For the past few weeks, I've watched the people of Minneapolis prove this doesn't have to be the case. Humans and the decentralized power of community can always find a way. Part 6, the freedom machine. So, what do we do? How do we take action? And I keep coming back to something super simple because it works well for me, almost embarrassingly so. The answer isn't a policy proposal or a political movement. It's my bicycle. It just so happens that I'm heading up to Minneapolis this weekend for the annual bicycle swap meet. It's a work trip, but that's never a burden for me because I'm staying with family, meeting up with friends, and connecting with my bicycle community. Even before the events of last weekend, I made plans to help where I can and find meaningful participation in the resistance. But that's all changed now. I'm bringing my bike along to join thousands of others on a memorial ride through the city to honor Alex Pretti. It all started with his local bike shop in South Minneapolis, and now it's grown into dozens of other cities around the world to ride in solidarity. People from everywhere showing up with their bodies, riding together, being present for one another. There's something about that image, and about the image of thousands of cyclists riding at the same time for the same purpose, that captures everything I believe about how we will adapt to the changes to come. Marx wrote extensively on what we will do when work no longer defines us. His answer is this: community, connection, experience, art, and meaning. These are not consolation prizes for losing a class war. They are the entire point of living, and they always were. We're just too busy living in a world that made us forget. He also wrote extensively on revolution. In his early works, violence and bloodshed seemed inevitable. But as time went on and America began to blossom, he became more optimistic. In a famous 1872 speech in The Hague, he admitted, "We do not deny that there are countries like America, England, and if I knew your institutions better, I might add Holland, where the workers can attain their goal by peaceful means." However, he still maintained that in countries with authoritarian regimes, violence was the only way out. I've come to believe that the way we avoid the dark side of this revolution, the economic collapse, the bloodshed, the dystopian surveillance state, is by living as if the Renaissance is happening right now. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the government to force your hand. Just start living your best life now. And only you will know what you can do to achieve this. For me, it's pretty straightforward today. I can personalize my artisanal bicycle, join my community in meaningful pro-social action, document our collective experience, and share it with all of you so our tech overlords can exploit us for profit and power, removing any real hope for the future of humanity. Just kidding. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching Instead of Working.